Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm here with another interview. This time we have Sebe from CGN Esports, and he's going to be talking a little bit with me about franchising as well as his new roster coming up in the second part to this video, which should be out soon. But for now, Sebe, how are you doing? Welcome. What is it that you do within CGN, and can you tell us a little bit about your region?
Yeah, hey man. Yeah, it's nice to be here. My role within CGN is actually quite complicated. My official title is Head of Valorant, but we're gonna change it to Sports Director, Valorant Sports Director, something on those lines. So I do coach the main team together with Capio, who's a former 1.6 pro, but I also manage the team. I do a lot of scouting work to find new players, and I work with the academy team and coach them as well.
So speaking from your experience here in the role that you have, you said that you do a bit of scouting as well. Looking at all of these potential rosters coming up in franchising, what is most interesting to you about the changes that we can expect to see between these teams?
I think it's gonna be interesting to see if any team will not change.
Yeah.
Because I do think every team is gonna change, mostly due to the fact that once you're in franchising, you have access to all players who are not in franchising because they do want to be in this league. And if you're honestly looking at every roster, there's always a player or two who are a bit below the level. I mean, we see it now. Fnatic wants to change a player, right, with Mystic. Guild recently. I mean, they're not in franchising, but I don't know. It's just something I've thought of.
Yeah.
So I think most teams are going to change something. I think some teams are going to change the whole roster.
With the Fnatic situation that you mentioned as well, of course, as of recording this, today Mystic released that he would be exploring options within Valorant. Do you think that that maybe sometimes goes the other way as well? Because I think Mystic, on all accounts, had a fairly decent tournament and was maybe one of the standout performers for Fnatic at Champions. Do you think some players as well would perhaps be tempted to explore their options with this new opportunity that they're provided?
I'm not 100% familiar with the rules of the franchise league, but I do know that there's gonna be set like this kind of salary you earn, like the minimum level or something is gonna be set by Riot. Maybe the brand or how they support you is actually more relevant than anything else. If I was in a team that would make franchise, I would just be happy to be there, and I wouldn't be like, hello, anybody else wants me, because if you read the responses, I don't think he's gonna play for Fnatic anymore.
Yeah, I mean
I think he's good enough to play in the franchise league.
Oh, 100%. I think with such consistent performances at a high level, you would expect a lot of players to make it through. Now being in the second year of Valorant so far, there is a lot of rosters which have built up and players which have made a name for themselves. Looking at the teams that we have in franchising in comparison to the teams that were present at Champions and have been in Masters, for what reasons in terms of brands do you think that have helped support them be in this position?
I think if we just compare the organizations across titles and then you focus on success, brand building, and content mostly, how professional those teams were, how much they support the different scenes, like are they supporting game changers, for example, or are they just jumping on it because they think they have to? I think all of those things play a role, but I think if you look at Koi, it's also important that you have a really big community behind it, and I think Koi is like the biggest Spanish organization actually, and even though they didn't really have any success so far in Valorant, and I do think they're going to change 4 or 5 players in their roster, you really do want to have this kind of organization that works really professionally and has this huge community behind them. You want them in the league.
Yeah, speaking of big organizations being in VCT, or literally it's in the name, right? The organization big. What would that provide for a region like DACH and the development of talent that you're looking to bring through? Just a quick disclaimer before this next question. This interview was recorded before the 30 partnered teams in VCT had been confirmed, so the inclusion of Big was an uncertainty at this point in time. However, I feel the question still holds a lot of relevance when you consider the path to pro and progression within the DACH region, and what the absence of a team like this could really do to hinder that kind of development that we see.
Yeah, I think if we get big into the franchise league, it's gonna be more interesting for young German-speaking players to try and make it all the way to the franchise league, because it's more likely if you're a German player to get into franchise if there's actually big up there, because they always want to have this German core, this national identity, and I don't know. We do have some talent in our region that I think has the potential to go all the way, but it's easier to get into big if you now play for, I don't know, Ovation, CGN, or Wave or something, than to get into Fnatic.
With that link to VRL, of course, you have the 3/5 rule now coming in for players. What effects do you expect that to have on the rosters? Players like Deepmans, for example, a young Turkish player who's active in the DACH region. Do you expect them to then move towards Turkish VRLs with that now around the corner? And who do you think is going to come out strongest?
I think that in terms of Deepmans, I don't see him play in a Turkish VRL. I think he either goes to a big international team, or he would go to like a Turkish franchise team, to a BBL or Foot, if footballists get it in, right? But in terms of just the pure rosters, I know all the rosters basically for the off season right now, except Mouse. I'm not sure what they're doing. And most of those teams changed dramatically. A lot of them added more German players. A lot are currently in like a phase of they're trying to find themselves or redefine themselves. Like Angry Titans released their whole roster, and now they're rebuilding with only German players. And the amount of talent still out there is very limited, because most of these players are signed already. I mean, there are those talents, right? But you need to find them.
In searching for players is one of the parts or one of the aspects of your job. What is one of the first things that you look for when you're scouting a new player?
Yeah, first of all, I actually talk to my own players and say, what kind of player would you like to have in a team? What kind of role do we need? Because sometimes I mostly go the orders. I want to have the best player, and then I want to have the right role, because I do have some players who are somewhat flexible. But actually, with my new players that I signed now, I actually focus a lot of role on the role, just to make sure everyone's comfortable. And for us, the last split was not as successful as we hoped it would be. And I think the main reason was that the personalities didn't really click. We didn't have enough energy. We didn't have this leader. We didn't have this common sense of thinking. We didn't talk enough about our philosophy of how we want to play. And now we did that. We talked more and we tried longer to make sure that the players want to play the style we play, because it is quite original, and a lot of players don't like it. They come and they play and they're like, they want instructions. Tell me what to do. And I tell them, you need to think for yourself. You need to be responsible. You need to, there's a gap. I go, I push, I take the risk, right? If they're not capable to do that, then they're not going to be happy with us. If they're not capable to do that, then they're not going to be happy with us.
I guess that begs the question as well then, looking wider towards VCT with the amount of opportunities now available for star players, in comparison to having that team cohesion or individual prowess, which one do you think that you favor more when teams are building rosters? Would you look to maybe select one big player and build around them, or is there a better way of approaching that process?
Yeah, I mean, that really depends on the player. I think there's some players who are exceptional, right? But I would not want to build a team around them, because nobody wants to play with them. And you have to get in there and work every day, like 6, 8, 10 hours of gaming, of VODs, of everything. And if you don't like to be around each other, I mean, you don't need to be best friends, but you need to have like this working relationship. And there's teams in DACH where there's players where you know they don't like each other, and then you know, okay, this is going to be one season, and then one of you leaves, and that's what always happens, right? So if my star player is a great guy and people want to play with him, then yeah, I try to build a team around him, right? But I rather have 5 players that are on the same level. Everybody can shoot. Everybody they get along, right? Because then if you build it up and you just have this one player who needs to perform, if he has a bad day, what do you do then? Right? I mean, like a CNET, does he have bad days? I don't know. The Dirky, I don't know. They mostly don't have bad days, but you should have like the weight on different shoulders.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is just about balancing out that workload a bit. And then I find it so interesting, the point you say as well about everyone getting on, because you feel as if it should be something so simple. But literally, when I spoke to Gorilla as well, analyst for Team Vitality, on my previous interview, he also listed that as being like top of the list in terms of what you expect from a team. And I find it so surprising that a lot of players just aren't able to work in that environment. Do you think that is potentially more of a symptom of esports as a whole and the environment it's in terms of online and the interactions that people have with each other, perhaps?
Uh, yeah, I actually think that could be the case, because I think if you take the 5 players and you have them meet in real life,
Mm,
you're gonna know instantly if they get along or not. But online, it's different
yeah.
and difficult, because some players, that they're gonna show their nice face, and then they got the contract, and then they're like, oh, okay, I can do what I want,
Mm,
right? So I try to, when I was trialing, even on the first day, I was like writing Doom Bros. I was like, can we play you guys? Because that's a team we struggle
mm,
to beat, right? Because they're very good. And then I want to see how frustrated do the players get. And like with
mm.
one of my trials, after 2 games, I hear the tilt, and I'm like, okay, see you later.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of if you're a really good player, right? If you look at Counter-Strike, you have Monzi
mm.
from G2,
Yeah.
who's an exceptional talent, and then you look how much he played in his life. If you are a regular teen and you go out and you have friends in school and sports, you don't have the time to play this much of Counter-Strike,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
So you, like, a lot of players are kind of more introverted, or they don't go out a lot. I mean, they're different players, right? For you have
Yeah.
party guys also, but yeah, a lot of esports players, they do struggle a bit with those human interactions
Mm,
sometimes.
mhm. Yeah, I guess that is another overlap as well that you have with traditional sport and the value that bringing in a mental coach can have, for example, stopping you from falling short at the final hurdle. I remember Astralis way back always had that syndrome of only being able to finish in second place, but with a few tweaks in that kind of regard, it can really help you out. Do you then find it interesting that teams are changing up their rosters, before franchising even, and removing players like Fnatic, for example, going multiple splits without keeping the same 5 players? Would it be more of a merit if they were to stick together and try things out, or in the business as a whole, do you think it's too cutthroat to facilitate keeping players together when the results aren't necessarily there?
I mean, that really depends on if you believe the player is the right player, and you just need to change the circumstances in which they work together. I mean, a lot of the times you play longer with the team and you realize that this person actually doesn't believe in the way we play,
Hmm.
right? For example, when I take my personal opinion, like we played with French players sometimes, and they do like to have structure, right? They do like to have those plans,
Hmm.
and we don't really have them. I mean, we do have them, but it's a smaller level of importance for
Hmm.
us. And if you have someone who doesn't believe in this, um, then you can't fix it, right?
Yeah.
And uh, we did have a player who was underperforming, but in the past with Leon, who was underperforming, but I knew that he would be better if he would be more comfortable. So I worked a lot on that. I
Mm.
didn't even talk about in-game. I just focused on making him comfortable, and that actually boosted his performance
Mm.
quite a
Hmm.
lot. I mean, it didn't work out in the end, but you need to focus on what is limiting the performance on the server, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the skill. I mean, I studied to become a teacher, so I have
Mm.
I don't have my diploma yet, but I will have a master's degree in
Nice.
education. So I try to,
Mm.
like, make sure people get along on a human level as well. And for us, I work with Carpio, who's a bit more old school. We sometimes say we're good cop, bad cop, right? I'm the good cop, and he tells me you have to be the bad cop when I'm not there, right? So
Yeah, I guess as well, there is a huge overlap in those science aspects of the mental performance as well, because when you look at esports and you look at these athletes, for example, who hold it in such a high regard, sometimes people who are into those traditional sports find it confusing because they don't understand that it can be so taxing in so many ways. And that's really something interesting to consider. But going back to VRLs, you spoke as well about your friend Yurtsin, and they had created a list of which region they think will come out as the best as a result of the 3/5 rule. And they had France Revolution as the top one. Do you stand behind that pick and agree with it? And why is that?
Yeah, I absolutely stand behind it. I think his list is pretty good, but I also believe that France is the strongest region, mostly based on the fact that they do have a lot of good players, right? They don't necessarily have the best players in general, but they do have a lot of very talented, strong players. Most of their teams are French speaking. Like,
Yeah.
look in my region, how I think we have one German speaking roster, right? One. And next split it's gonna be 2.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna change a lot. I think that France is most of the teams don't need to change if you tell them we need 3-5.
Yeah.
Right. And in Spain, I'm not sure. I think almost every roster in DACH. And in the off season, so for the rest of the year, as far as I know, we have 3 teams right now that have the German core, basically 3 out of 8, right? So most teams will change again in January. I don't know. It gets really complex from here on, but I think that as soon as we add a lot of national talent in our own region, at least for the time being, the next half year, it will slow us down, DACH. It will also slow Spain down, right? But Turkey and France, they can just cruise on, I think.
Yeah, looking at DACH as a region, you spoke very highly of it and the growth that has been provided for you so far. What would you say your main strength is as a region?
I actually think that we do have a pretty cool community behind it. I mean, we do have fights sometimes, I think, like every family does, right? But we do have a few people. I mean, I was very outspoken about that as well because I'm one of the better known people in the region, and I do want to have a healthy community where people are honest, right, with each other, and it's not always like behind the back you tell something else. I don't know. I think that's really annoying. And if you're free in November, I can only invite you to come to Cologne. I hope this time my youngsters, my academy team, will make it to the split finals, which is the finals of the second division, right? The VRC finals from Project B. They're gonna be in Cologne on the 11/11, which is also the start of Carnival in Germany, which is crazy.
Nice.
Crazy that you do it on the same weekend.
Big celebration, yeah.
That is a crazy weekend in Cologne, I can tell you. I was there 3 months ago. That we had like 400 people in one store where we celebrated the Game Changers teams and the regional teams, and it was amazing. Some people didn't have a voice after for like 2 weeks because they screamed so much.
It sounds really good as a region as a whole. And look, maybe if my calendar's free in November, I'll try and make a way over. And the celebration, the carnival may have just sold it to me, but we will have to see.
My brand, so
yeah, your brand is Sebe, a little bit quirky, a little bit different.
I mean, in German it's Sebe, which sounds
Sebe.
Sebe. Right?
Okay. Would I introduce you as Sebe then, or just Sebe?
Whatever.
Okay.